It's 6 p.m. here, Cairo local time. A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Channel 2's English News Bulletin. My name is Angie Meher and we begin straight away with a look at the headlines. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to head Tokyo International Conference for African Development (TICAD) with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli meets with Higher Committee concerned to organize the opening ceremony of the Grand Egyptian Museum. And clashes between government forces and militants kill 51 from both sides in Syria. Welcome back now for the details in full. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was in Japan today to co-chair the 7th edition of the Tokyo International Conference for African Development (TICAD), which is being held between August the 28th and 30th with his Japanese counterpart. We have more details in this report. Continuing after this technical error, the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry and his Japanese counterpart Taro Kono headed the preparatory meeting for the Tokyo International Conference for African Development (TICAD), which will be held in the Japanese city of Yokohama. TICAD conference is to discuss several files including health, education, climate change and women empowerment, as well as Africa's security and development. Earlier, the two ministers held a bilateral meeting on bilateral ties and issues of mutual concern, as well as the agenda of the TICAD conference. And now we bring you the report where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived in the Japanese capital, Tokyo, to head the 7th Tokyo International Conference for African Development with the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The presidential cabinet spokesman, Ambassador Bassem Radi, said that President el-Sisi will hold bilateral talks on Wednesday with the Japanese Prime Minister on means of boosting the joint ties in all fields and undergoing mega projects implemented by Japan in Egypt, such as highways, the underground metro, the Japanese University for Technology and the Grand Egyptian Museum. Radi said the meeting will also focus on coordinating mutual positions towards the issues of sustainable development, peace and security in the African continent. President el-Sisi will deliver a speech on means of supporting sustainable development in Africa to keep up with its agenda for the year 2063 in the inaugural session of the TICAD summit. The summit is among the most important development international gatherings between Africa, Japan, and international organizations. Several heads and leaders of African countries are participating in the conference, which will be held in the city of Yokohama. Fostering cooperation, investment, trade, and strategic partnership between Japan and Africa, the conference will discuss several files, including health, education, climate change, and women empowerment, as well as Africa's security. And on the sidelines of the International Conference for African Development (TICAD), the Minister of Trade and Industry and Minister of Investment inaugurated the Egyptian-Japanese Business Forum. During the forum, the ministers reviewed economic plans in Egypt and strategies to boost industry and foreign trade within Egypt's 2030 vision. They also reviewed expanding Egyptian-Japanese cooperation in African countries in light of the Egyptian chairmanship of the African Union. Discussions also focused on bilateral preferential accessibility for Egyptian exports within the framework of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which went into effect last May. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli presided over a meeting on Tuesday with the Higher Committee concerned to organize the Grand Museum opening ceremony. During the meeting, the Prime Minister asserted that the construction works at the Grand Egyptian Museum have nearly been completed. Madbouli said that the Grand Egyptian Museum opening ceremony will be held over several days, adding that an international specialist company will take part in organizing the ceremony. The Premier also urged all concerned bodies to coordinate with the different ministries for the inauguration ceremony of the Grand Museum in a bid to reflect Egypt's huge history and civilization. The museum is being built in cooperation with Japan, noting that its masterpieces will be displayed in the best way possible worldwide. Fighting and airstrikes in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib, which pits government forces against rebel forces, killed 51 militants on both sides.
The Kurdish-led authority running much of north and east Syria said that the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia had pulled forces and heavy weapons from some positions at the border with Turkey. The Kurdish-led authority said that the YPG withdrew from the Tel Abyad and Ras Al Ain areas in recent days, proving it was serious about reaching a solution through dialogue. Turkey and Washington agreed this month to create a coordination center for a planned safe zone in northeast Syria along the border, including joint patrols. In northwestern Syria, clashes between government forces and militants had killed 51 on both sides on Tuesday. A war monitor said rebels had attacked government positions in the south of Idlib, the rebel-led province that has been under attack by forces for months. The fighting, which killed 23 government forces and 20 opponents, took place east of the town of Khan Sheikhoun, which was recaptured by the government forces last week. Meanwhile, Syrian and Russian bombardment hit the vicinity of the town of Marat al-Nu'man, where 12 people were reported killed on Monday in the strikes. The strikes come despite a deal signed in September last year by Moscow and Ankara to avert a full-blown assault on the Idlib region, which lies on the borders with Turkey.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan met for talks in Moscow on Tuesday on ongoing fighting in northwestern Syria. Erdogan said last week that a Russian-backed offensive by Syrian government against Idlib province very seriously threatened Turkey's national security after the forces encircled a Turkish observation post in the south of Idlib. According to the United Nations, Syrian-Russian bombardment since late April has killed more than 920 people and caused more than 400,000 people to flee their homes. President Michel Aoun said that Lebanon had a right to defend itself, likening Israeli drone strikes to a declaration of war amid rising tensions between the Iran-backed Hezbollah movement and Israel. Israel's military said its northern command was on high alert at the borders with Syria and Lebanon, as Lebanon's Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri urged diplomats to help prevent an escalation. Aoun discussed the Israeli assault with the country's United Nations Special Coordinator, Jan Kubis. He told Kubis the attacks in the suburbs and in backup violated UN Security Council Resolution 1701 that ended the July 2006 war. Aoun al-Hariri called for Lebanon's Higher Defense Council to meet later on Tuesday. The Lebanese Hezbollah movement on Tuesday said a drone that crashed in its Beirut stronghold at the weekend contained an explosive device weighing more than 5 kilograms. The group had previously said an Israeli reconnaissance drone had flown over the south of Beirut before crashing, and that a second armed drone had then hit a specific area before dawn on Sunday. The latest discovery, Hezbollah said, confirms that Sunday's drone attack involved not one, but two explosive-rigged drones, one which exploded and the other that did not because of a technical failure. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday warned Lebanon, Hezbollah's chief, to be careful with their words. Netanyahu spoke after a series of incidents in recent days that have raised tension between Israel, Lebanon, Iran and Hezbollah. In a televised speech, Nasrallah accused Israel of being behind a drone attack on the Lebanese movement's Beirut stronghold and threatened retaliation. The Saudi-led coalition forces said they intercepted and downed a Houthi rebels drone launched towards the kingdom from Yemen. Coalition spokesman Turki Maliki said that the drone was downed in Yemeni airspace. Moving to Iran, where President Hassan Rouhani on Tuesday told the United States to take the first step by lifting all sanctions against Iran, dampening down the likelihood of meeting U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif said the prospects for such a meeting were unimaginable, even if the U.S. rejoins the landmark nuclear deal with Iran. Trump had said less than 24 hours earlier he was ready to meet with Rouhani within weeks. Iran's economy has been battered by U.S. sanctions imposed since Trump in May last year unilaterally withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers. And moving to some business news, Egypt's market indices were mixed during today's trading sessions, affected by purchasing operations by local and Arab and foreign investment funds and corporations, in addition to the selling by Arab and foreign funds. Benchmark index EGX30 retreated 0.1% to close at 14,281 points, whilst the capped EGX30 index rose 0.1%. Medium-capped index EGX70 and broader index EGX100 increased by 0.01% and 0.1%, respectively. To global markets, world shares gained today as some investors held out hopes for a trade deal between the United States and China, even though they continued to raise tariffs on each other last week. Germany's DAX rose 0.4% and France's CAC 40 gained 0.2%. Italy's FTSE MIB rose over 1% on hopes the country's ruling five-star movement and the opposition Democratic Party would make a deal to form a new Italian government. MSCI's All-Country World Index, which tracks shares across 47 countries, was up 0.16%. Meanwhile, in Asia, MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan was up 0.35% after dropping 1.3% the previous day. Japan's Nikkei rose 1% and the Shanghai Composite Index rallied 1.35%, while South Korea's Kospi added 0.4%. Crude oil prices recovered some ground as the broader market stabilized, trimming some of their significant losses the previous day on the prospect of crude from Iran currently facing sanctions hitting the market. Brent crude futures were up at $59.01 per barrel, and U.S. crude also rose to $53.97 a barrel. In the currencies market, the greenback traded at 105.685 yen, and the euro was flat at $1.1100.